All right, guys. One last topic here. Then I'm gonna end it because I'm hungry, I'm tired, and yeah. So, all right, guys. Be sure to like the goddamn video. It's free. Don't cost you a motherfucking thing now. Like the video. Please like the video, guys. Help out a brother. A brother needs your help. Okay. I need your help. I need your helps. All right, guys. So, Briahna, you're great, man. I gotta say, this woman is one of the most intelligent. She's a bright spot on the left, man. These days, if you call her the left, like she's speaking truth to power, man. She did this interview. What the name of this podcast? Doom Scroll Podcast or whatever. I never even heard of these people before, but YouTube suggested it to me, which is rare. Like YouTube suggesting lefty content. Like what in the hell going on with YouTube lately? But anyway, so yeah, like not gonna play the whole thing. The one thing I like about YouTube, I give YouTube credit. Like they have like chapters you can go through. Like that helps out a brother that doesn't that commentates on things. Like thank you for that feature, YouTube. I wish you stop suppressing fucking leftist accounts, but if you stop doing that, like give us a fair shake along with the right, then maybe YouTube won't be so bad. But YouTube, it's bought by the deep state. I ain't gonna get into all that shit. But anyway, all right, guys. So like, I'm gonna play a few parts. This is her talking about forced to vote, which to me, like, if the squad went along with forced to vote and did it, like, things would be different. Like, people wouldn't have a disliking for the squad like we do now. So yeah, I'm gonna play it, and I'll play a few other parts of this thing too. Watch it yourself, guys. It's a good interview. I watched it the whole thing myself, so I got a better idea of what's going on. So, all right, guys, here we go.
Here, but I promise this will connect in a moment. You supported Force the Vote.
I did.
Alongside Jimmy Dore. You caught a lot of heat for that position.
I did.
Seems to be a recurring theme in the podcast. If you would recap for our listeners what Force the Vote was, in case they don't remember that,
Sure.
and what you hope to accomplish with that.
Sure. I love to point out that I first heard about Force the Vote watching Sam Cedar's show. And knowing about the acrimony between Sam Cedar and Jimmy Dore, when I heard Sam Cedar say that there was a good idea coming from Jimmy Dore, my little ears perked up.
Okay, I'm listening. Yeah.
How now, brown cow? And I went over and I heard the proposition, which was that because of the narrow margins in the House at the time, that the number of squad members exceeded the margin that Democrats basically you needed all of the squad members to be on board for the Democrats to ever win anything in the House. That means that much like Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, these people that we're told had the Biden administration in a vice grip, the progressives similarly could dictate the agenda of the Democratic Party, or at least hold it up so that nothing happens until there are some concessions that are made. And from my perspective, the real beauty of Force the Vote is that while frequently the argument is made that while the right can play hardball because they don't want good things to happen, they're happy if government doesn't work, they want government to be small, and Democrats want good things to happen, so they can't just be obstructionists. We need to play nice so we can get the ball going. The stakes of Force the Vote weren't some spending package and kids getting health care or anything of the like. It was simply Nancy Pelosi's ability to be Speaker of the House. That's it.
Right.
And we now know, because 2 years later, Republicans did the exact Force the Vote strategy and were able to get a number of concessions, that this strategy would have worked.
The strategy, yeah, exactly. That's one thing that drives me crazy. Like, you got Cenk Uygur, one example. The only reason why I believe Cenk didn't go along with it because him and Jimmy Dore had a falling out. Yeah, we know about that. But again, like I said again, like the strategy would have worked. Like they made Kevin McCarthy the new brass of the Republican Party. I forgot what they call themselves. Freedom Caucus. Yeah, the Freedom Caucus. I guess the Freedom Caucus had more kahunas to stand up to Kevin McCarthy and say, "Hey, we want this, this, and this. Your ass won't be Speaker of the House until we get all these concessions for you, motherfucker." And all we asked the squad to do back in 2020 was to fucking force the vote for a vote for Medicare for all. We didn't say, hey, Medicare for all gotta pass. We didn't say you gotta do this, you gotta do that. What? Just put the vote on the floor so we can find out who the fuck ain't for Medicare for all. Some of the motherfuckers say they are. They just cosplaying. Like these people don't like they get money from United Healthcare and that. Now, how you gonna be for Medicare for all when they tell you what to do? You that bitch. Like, but anyway, let me continue.
At the time, however, while there were many people in support, not just Jimmy Dore, I think it's important to point out, Crystal Ball, Cornel West, Chris Hedges, a lot of people who were frankly held in very high esteem on the left, but whose voices I think were ignored because it was very convenient to say, this is a Jimmy Dore idea, he's a polarizing figure,
Right,
this is an
right.
excuse for me not to buy in.
Yeah.
There was what felt like a really sort of irrational rejection of it that was very personality driven. At the time, I wrote a piece for Current Affairs.
And another problem too that I have with people too is that Fifi's heard over Jimmy Dore said about them, whatever, or they just don't like Jimmy Dore as a person. Like, Force the Vote is bigger than Jimmy Dore. I'm not a fan of Jimmy Dore anymore, but I remember Jimmy Dore said one time on his show that like he wanted Jank to be a part of it too as well. He said he'll step aside. He won't, fuck with it no more, Jank, because even Jimmy Dore at the time realized that this movement was bigger than him. Like you know, so yeah, like thinking about one person when it's supposed to be an all around effort to get the squad to do that is it's bonkers to me. But let me
Bears
see.
attempting to lay out the strategy, separate and apart from Jimmy Dore. So, okay, fine, you hate his guts. I don't know what happened back in the TYT days. I'm newer on the scene than that. But here's how you can understand this without ever having to click on one of his videos, right?
Yeah.
And in response to that, people were saying a lot of misinformation. Some of the most visceral opponents of it were opposing it on the basis, for example, that Kevin McCarthy would become Speaker of the House if the progressives withheld their vote for Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, Cenk Uygur said that shit. I remember that. Yeah, like deeply unserious. And I remember, I remember this shit crazily. I remember Cenk said the squad need to take that energy and instead of forcing a vote that won't get nowhere. Let's put our energy towards fucking fight for 15, which again the Democrats didn't want to happen. Like Christian cinema, remember that? Remember that? Oh God. And now, yeah, TYT see why they ratings they subscriber base is leaving them. They see why. Jesus.
Pelosi, which couldn't happen because you don't need, it's not a bare majority that you would need. You need over 50% of Congress. So unless Democrats voted affirmatively for a Republican speaker would not have defaulted into the position,
Sure.
even if they had gotten more votes than whatever alternative Democratic candidate were in the mix, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And again, we saw exactly this play out 2 years later with the Republicans. No matter how many times Kevin McCarthy wasn't speaker, Hakeem Jeffries didn't magically become speaker, right? That's not how it works. And there was historical precedent of this having happened like 100 times back in the early part of the 20th century. This could have been a real opportunity for progressives to show that they do actually have power. We're not looking for some time 20 years in the future where we've gotten 50 more AOCs in Congress. Right now, today, you can demonstrate the value of fighting for more AOCs in Congress because even with 4 or 5 or 6 of them, they can have the Biden administration in a vice grip. And you can show Nancy Pelosi, this woman who's made your life hell, who remember made you cry on the floor over the Iron Dome vote,
Oh my God.
who whipped you all
Yeah.
into shape, who you're cowering around calling Mama Bear because of God knows what she told you behind the scenes. You can demonstrate to her that you have a little bit of power on your own. And they chose not to do that for various reasons. I think a lot of it was interpersonal. And it was clear, I think, to a lot of us that it was a kind of a once in a, I'm going to say generational opportunity, but it's certainly once in a term style of opportunity.
Yeah. I think this gets at a contradiction that we have in today's left. Maybe it's been there for much longer, but people will say that we need this overwhelming majority to accomplish our goals. And they'll also say that I refuse to share a table with anyone who doesn't share my exact specific beliefs. And there are elements of Jimmy Dore's audience that are ugly or not people that I may personally want to hang out with. he has a lot of conservative audience, a lot of people with crank ideas, but this
Oh my
seemed like a
God.
moment to, scalpel approach, really exert some power in an effective way. But people
Yeah, like the guy that asked the question. My thing about that is that you ain't got to have a bill with these people. My thing is, hey, I mean, Jimmy Dore is questionable in terms of where he lies politically these days. But again, it's like if you can get some of his, like, let's say they was on the right, and then you can possibly change them. Like, not everybody on the right is a white supremacist. Like, I just had to say that as a side note because um, yeah, like I get what he's saying. Like, yeah, like, are you sure you want to work with some of the extreme right there with Jimmy? Like, but yeah, but anyway, let me fast forward. Let's talk about. Well, I'm gonna talk about um, Democratic versus the third parties right quick. Yeah, here we go.
faith podcast.
The idea that there was going to be an ability to take over the Democratic Party, to use traditional political means to reform the party, to pull it back to the left, was really undermined by what we saw and how the Bernie campaigns in 2016 and 2020 played out. And I'm not someone who I think jumped prematurely to these kinds of conclusions. It's part of why I sometimes become frustrated when people might want to write me off as a bad actor or someone who is, I don't know, is part of her grift is to have a pessimistic read of politics. To the contrary, I worked for the Bernie campaign in 2020. Right. I like to say I gave that man the best years of my 30s. And for what, right? Like I was really committed to the project. I'm someone who only, left the law and entered into.
You know, Bree, to her credit, she worked for the Bernie campaign, so she was like, she was right inside of it. Like she know what happens inside of the campaign. Even like as us, like the people that supported Bernie twice. Some people, like Misty, for example, she said she supported Bernie in 2016, and she knew he was full of shit after that. Like we should have listened to Misty Winston. Great example of why people tell you like, hey, this guy he's suspect. Don't support him. Like he gon' like he did the shit again. Like he supported Hillary. We looked over that. Then 2020 you gonna run, supporting him again. Like yeah. Um, I mean yeah. Like sometimes I really wish like we us on the left like we should the money we donated to Bernie, which was millions of dollars, we should have took that money, applied it towards mutual aid and organizing back then. Like I think we'll be in a better place. Like the left together, like left right now, man, it's a clusterfuck. Like you got people cosplaying the left, you got some people that's you know want to microanalyze everything, do purity tests on people. Um, like it's crazy, but I'll let her continue. Here we go.
The politics precisely because of how much I believed in the project in 2016 and because I felt compelled to start writing and begin a journalism career, precisely because of the media institutions of journalists' unwillingness to engage substantively and accurately with what the movement and the spirit of the movement was all about. So I feel like I had given myself in many, many ways. I made some sacrifices in order to try that particular path. But I think I had an up-close view, and many other people had less proximate views of how the Democratic Party is willing to organize itself very effectively and efficiently to defeat a left insurgency in a way that it seems not to have the same appetite to actually defeat the right.
Exactly. Like somebody said this one time. I think in 2020, like the Democrats will go far to defeat their left counterpart rather than defeat the Republicans. Which that shows you, like I told people last year, the election last year, like if they wanted to win, you will not run Kamala Harris, despite Joe Biden picking her. Like a lot of people said, well, they didn't have time for a primary and all that stuff. He waited too long to drop out. Nah, he had time. Yeah, but y'all don't care about winning. Like that's why some of the half of the Democratic Party holding up wearing pink holding up signs saying Bernie I mean must steal and Trump is a liar. Like yeah, y'all not serious, bro. Like y'all don't want Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders is well, he's supposed to be anti-establishment. Like y'all don't want an anti-establishment candidate. Y'all want somebody that's pro-establishment, pro Wall Street, pro military industrial complex, pro big pharma. Like y'all want all that shit. So let me continue.
And when you see over the course of years opportunities that were available to the small number of people who did get elected into Congress, who were progressives, who were the Justice Democrats candidates that did support Bernie Sanders and ostensibly espouse his values, the unwillingness to actually be adversarial with the Democratic Party demonstrated that the Democratic Party changes you. It's not the other way around. And the Biden administration in particular, seeing 4 years of what it meant to have, or at least 2 years of what it meant to have all of Congress and the White House, and to still have the messaging be, he just can't do anything. It's not his fault. He just can't do anything. At a certain point, fine, I'm convinced. Democrats in power can't do anything. We have a lot that we want to do on the left.
Right.
So then how do you get that done? And it simply doesn't seem to me that it's possible to do it by electing enough AOCs. Because we've seen in really recent history some pretty bad examples of how AOC is willing to bend the knee and completely undermine her own political project.
Did anyone blame you for Trump's victory because you voted for Jill Stein this time?
I mean, it's like white noise. People are always going to say that sort of thing. First of all, I live.
Exactly, white noise. Exactly. Like, yeah, people blame me. I'm shocked my mama didn't blame me. Like, she mama know, like my mama, for example, she know that I'm over the Democratic Party. Like, she blamed me. No. When she blamed me? Fuck. No, mama never really blamed me. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Oh, I have a brain fart. Like, people will blame you. Hey, people actually blame me. My auntie blamed me. I mean, for Kamala Harris winning. You know, my auntie has the audacity to call me a misogynist because I wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris. I'm like, I voted for a woman, so I can't be misogynist. I voted for Jill Stein because Jill Stein had my best interest at heart. Like, Kamala Harris, have she fucking she had a reparations a bill proposed? Has she had a black agenda? No. So that right there was enough for me to say, no, fuck her, fuck the Democratic Party. They don't care nothing about black people. So yeah, liberals blame the Palestinians. Like, they wish bad upon the Palestinians for not winning. Like, you deserve wherever you get, going back to Starbucks. Like, that's the Democratic base. And I'm a fool to say I'm willing to work with these people. Oh God. When people say shit like that, they're not gonna work with you. Like, that's just like saying a racist who wanna work with my black ass. They're not gonna work with me. So, all right, here we go.
Live in DC, so it's a laughable proposition that anybody I voted for mattered in any way.
Sure.
But I think particularly given the stakes of this election and the existence of a genocide happening in the background, I think really complicated the lesser of two evil arguments that were being made, at least within the left community. Of course, vote blue no matter who Democrats are going to say what they're going to say. There's that classic video of people leaving the DNC laughing and jeering and rolling their eyes at pro-Palestine activists and protesters. That was so disgusting and demoralizing to watch. But within the left community, whereas in 2020, I think I got a lot more pushback for voting green, or even in 2016, voting for Jill Stein in that election.
Yeah, me too.
And this time around, I think most people on the left were so frustrated with the options available to them, felt like it was such a personally, ethically troubling situation for themselves to vote for Kamala Harris, that I didn't get as much of that, to be honest.
Right.
And I think the numbers show that a lot of folks, for whatever reason, ended up staying home because they were similarly demoralized by the options on the table.
This end of the left liberal alliance.
All right, now I'm going to skip to her getting fired on the Hill because that's very important. I think that's probably what more people want to talk about. So here we go.
We tell ourselves that people to whom bad things happen must not have been working hard or they deserve it in some ways. And when good things befall us, we say it's because we were exceptional in these ways. And the things change, the kind of like theory of change argument is that when the gap between the world as it is and the world as it should be becomes so huge that we can no longer rationalize why we have what we have and others don't. or why we're struggling and others have so much. And as a media actor, I think that part of my responsibility is heightening those contradictions so we get people out of their apathy and get to a point where they feel like they cannot enjoy what they have. I mean, sorry,
Yeah.
be a downer,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you cannot enjoy, you cannot persist under the status quo.
Let's discuss, you mentioned your dear libertarian friend. I used to get my news from you from, let's say, like September of 2022 up until, I believe, June 7th of 2024. Did something happen there where you left the show abruptly? Like, seems very curious.
The Hill never actually said why they weren't having me back. I think the
What
email that I got,
coincidence?
Hey, we know why she got fired. Like they used that. Yeah, but she about to get into it. Let me let her talk. Let me let her cook. Yeah, we know why she got fired.
posted on Twitter, and it was
Right.
very minimal. My name was spelled wrong. Thanks, champs.
Good God.
And it seemed obvious, though, to me that it was because of my coverage of Gaza. There
Yeah.
had been a lot of internal pressure over it for, the eight months or so since October 7th, but especially ramping up for probably the 6 months before the end, when there was a complete overhaul in the kind of the show staff.
Right.
A new producer, an exodus of a lot of the old guard, and some others who were fired. So that basically, between January and when I was fired, there was nobody who had been working on the show the previous year except for Robbie.
Oh, wow.
And like my makeup artist.
Yeah.
I miss you, Diana. So, yeah, it was very clear that there was internal pressure for Robbie to balance out my takes. As a libertarian, a lot of libertarians are not pro-war in Gaza.
Yeah.
But I think, there was pressure to provide a counterbalance. And I think that put pressure on Robbie, who didn't necessarily want.
And see, like right there, like we know the Hill is corporate, right? The Hill is not independent media, but like yeah, they tell you what to say. Like, hey, she's anti-Israel, so you gotta play the pro-Israel part. Like, so maybe by this I look at Robbie different. So, but again, it's like if I were Robbie, I'd stand up and say, nah, man, I'm not. I don't want to get into that shit. But hey, it is what it is.
Want to even be having the conversation at all, who would rather have not talked about it at all, to provide a rather indefensible pushback to straight reporting. So let me be more specific in terms of what the pressure looked like. For one, we were told that our radars, which are our direct camera essays, we had complete editorial control over. When there started to be pushback on what we did in segments, and I was told we can do like one Gaza block a day, we did about 8 to 10 blocks. There were like 10 stories you could do about Gaza. And all of the Gaza stories were very well performing as well. So I would have my hobby horses that I would want to talk about from time to time that didn't perform well, and I had to kind of take it on the chin. Okay, we can only talk about this, labor organizing story so many times.
It's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game.
And the ad revenue is like really, that's what pays the bills. So
That's what I get that.
segments that pay well is kind of important. It's
I get
interesting
that.
that they wouldn't want to do
But
that.
Gaza was different, right? Gaza was one that I cared about and also performed well, and I was being told we had to basically get everything in one block. So consequently, I had negotiated out of doing.
See, guys, Hill was on. They were trying to suppress Gaza content. Of course, like I'm not surprised. Like I guess they tried so many things, because they get, like she said, they'll get pressure from the big bosses saying that, hey, we can't be talking about, Israel causing all this devastation to these Palestinians. Now we gotta suppress that content, like suppression every level, guys. Have Robbie to pretend to counter argue her points, and then cut down, like you can only talk about Gaza for like what 10 minutes or some shit. Oh God. But yeah, let me let it continue.
Doing as many radars. I started doing them again because I could have editorial control and talk about Gaza and get as many stories in my radar as I wanted to.
So you could do kind of 2 segments instead of just one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At that point, there started to be editorial pressure on my radars.
Of course.
If you have an old heating or air conditioning system like this,
Of course. Gotta get my YouTube Premium linked up. Shit.
right? And so tensions were heightening. There was also this push to get guests that were pro-Israel guests, which it's fine with me. I mean, like, I understand
Searching under the couch
reasoning.
cushions for these people.
Yeah, but the problem is, who are these people, right? So the pro.
Are they paid actors? It could be paid actors. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't put it past corporate media. I just can't put none past them.
Palestine guest would be a historian, a journalist, you know, people with credibility and insight and knowledge. The pro-Israel guest would be some guy who posts a lot about Israel from Israel, who would just get on and basically call me an anti-Semite and a Hamas lover and not offer anything substantive, and then use the clips to try to mount a like month-long hate campaign on Twitter to just kind of exhaust me. And so it was very frustrating, but I always said yes to those guests because I was trying to maintain the peace. And as long as I got to talk about what I wanted to talk about, I was willing to take my licks. Eventually, one of these guests was a sister of a hostage who volunteered herself for the show, which I thought was a first red flag, editorially, journalistically. And her, I don't want to mischaracterize her. I don't have the email in front of me. But she specifically said she wanted to come on to debate me, basically, to talk to me, which was clearly a red flag.
And she reached out to the producer.
Yeah, like, I think she was put up to that shit. I really thought, I don't really, she actually, like, they gave you your contact information, like, somebody on the Hill or something like that, one of those big bosses, put her up to that shit. Like, a ploy to get you fired. But let her continue. Like, yeah.
Exactly. And the producer, who I asked, does this seem legitimate to you? There are no other guests you can find? You know, can you find a Zionist historian, literally anybody who I can ask a question that has some like editorial value? But no, she volunteered herself. She came on and very predictably made it personal about me. Okay, you know, I was very happy to talk to her as a human being.
Now, if you are a victim of, you know, your sister is a hostage, like, you will not go on there to debate Briahna Joy Gray. You'll go on there to plead, like, Hamas, please, or plead to Israel or Hamas to stop this genocide from happening. Like, you don't, like, it just, that's just ultra suspect. Ultra suspect, man. Not surprised.
Misses her sister, about what her sister was like and how horrible it's been for her to miss her as she's been held hostage and what she knows about her health and yada, yada, yada. But at a certain point, she kept politicizing it, right? She kept saying, well, it's shameful, Briahna, that you don't care about the hostages. All right, well, if you're going to bring up the political question, how do you feel about these protests that have been happening in Israel where hostage family victims are very frustrated that Netanyahu isn't prioritizing hostage release? Well, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about politics. Okay, well, tell me about your sister. What was her favorite food? What did she love to do? I'm happy to talk about that. But eventually it got personalized, and I was feeling very frustrated with our producer, who doesn't step in, who very predictably knew this was going to happen. And at the end of the interview, when she calls me a rape apologist or whatever it was, I don't remember, and I roll my eyes, that was my frustration with the situation.
Yeah, that right there. You see, they use that like, hey, she don't care about the hostages. You know, Bree rolled her eyes. Wow. Yeah, like, yeah, it was a setup, obviously. I'm pretty sure Bree would tell you, she got set up. Like, yeah.
Being exactly what everybody could have predicted it was. And that I was working at an institution that not only wasn't protecting me, was setting me up, frankly.
Right.
It had done so more than once. At the same time, there was all this pressure behind the scenes to basically not talk about Gaza at all. And then I got an email the next day saying that my services were no longer needed.
Probably was not too surprising because there was an incident of this before.
Yes.
With Katie Halper.
Yes.
And I imagine you must have known that to some degree going into the job.
Yeah. So I was at Rising when Katie was, you know, no longer wanted to work with you. You know, however they characterize it. So what was interesting is we were always looking for new hosts, and Katie was being sort of auditioned to be a Friday host. I wanted to work a fewer, less days a week. People go on vacation. You need a deeper roster. And so we were really excited about that. There was also discussion of developing her own show on the program. And what happened with her is that she wrote a radar. It was factual, but the objection was apparently that she had described Israel as an apartheid state, something that is, like, frankly, not that controversial these days because we've pushed the Overton window with October 7th. But
yeah, that questions me. Like, I wonder is Risen's producers and the big bosses. I wonder if they Zionist. Obviously, like, how dare you, Katie Apple, talk about Israel's apartheid state? No, Israel has the right to exist. Those type of people, like, deeply unserious, man.
editorial had a problem. Higher ups at the Hill had a problem, and they pulled it. She offered to talk about it and rewrite it a little bit, as I understand, but they were like, no. And also, we never want to work with you again.
Wow.
I would not trust the Hill from an editorial perspective. They are fundamentally committed to a pro-Zionist approach to covering this particular issue.
Right.
And to the extent that there are people who are able to get alternative perspectives on the show, know that they're doing it beleaguered every step of the way.
So a media organization like The Hill, there are certain people who are in place that can gatekeep resources, editorial control, things like this. When you're on your own platform, you upload directly onto, I don't know where you do it, YouTube and whatever RSS feed and so on. No one can get in between you and the stuff that you publish. Did anyone try to come after your podcast after that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There was like a spam. I got like hundreds of emails to page. I think they mistakenly emailed me, like my Patreon email address, instead of like Patreon the business. I'm not saying these are the brightest bulbs in the shed. With a form letter that
Yeah, Zionists are stupid people.
was from a bunch of different like bot name accounts. Like it looked like it was coming from, but it was the same content that basically said Briahna's an anti-Semite and you should deplatform her from Patreon.
Right.
One of these days, that sort of thing might work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was a whole, 2 years ago, there was this whole cycle of people trying to get people kicked off of Substack because of their politics.
Yes. Yeah.
There was this.
Yeah, these are seeing people that try to get my account suspended on Twitter. I'm pretty sure. Like, yeah, these motherfuckers are crazy. I'm gonna end it right there. But yeah, y'all, like, not only she got fired from The Hill, which was a great thing because ever since then, Briahna podcast has blown up. Like, like she have banger after banger anyway, and people are supporting her. That's base. And second of all, fucking Zionists, are the same motherfuckers that tried to get her kicked off of Patreon. Like, Patreon is pretty sure her livelihood. See, they not only they fuck with your money, they fuck with your character. Like, these people, man, like, yeah, they try to get me kicked off of Twitter, which Twitter is my biggest platform to do this show and shit. Yeah, but like she said, man, like the Zionists, it's Zionist. Twitter's a Zionist platform. Elon is a Zionist himself, or a Nazi too. So yeah, like, yeah, man, like you speak anything bad against Israel, man. Oh shit, you like these Zionists call you every name out the book. I'm pretty sure they did her the same way they did me because I said fuck Israel like this.